The morning shift at the Galactic Communications Center started like any other day. 64471 settled into his workstation, his forearms moving across the control panels with practiced ease. Around him, dozens of other operators from various species monitored the endless stream of messages flowing through subspace channels across the galaxy. "Same old noise from Sector 7, called out Vrex, a tall Altarian with silver skin. "The humans are chattering again." Zix chuckled, a sound like grinding metal. "When are they not? I swear those mammals never stop talking. For 30 years, ever since the Galactic Confederation had made first contact with the small blue planet called Earth, humans had been the loudest species in known space. They broadcast everything. Scientific discoveries, entertainment programs, diplomatic messages, trade offers, cultural exchanges, and even personal communications between their scattered colonies. The communication logs showed the pattern clearly. Every day, thousands of human transmissions filled the subspace channels. They talked to each other constantly, sharing news from their homeworld, coordinating supply runs to their mining colonies, and sending messages to their diplomatic stations spread across Confederate space. "Traffic report from Sector 12, announced Kel, a insectoid Thrixian operator. "Human cargo ships requesting clearance through the Vegan Gateway. Same as yesterday. And the day before that," Zix added, pulling up his daily summary. "Earth Command sent another cultural exchange proposal to the Centauri Council. They want to share something called rock music with the Crystalline Collective. The aliens had grown used to this constant human noise. It was predictable, reliable, and mostly harmless. Humans seemed to have an endless need to communicate, to share their thoughts and experiences with anyone who would listen. Some species found it annoying, but most had simply learned to filter out the human chatter as background noise. Ambassador Threx of the Domination Fleet had once complained to the Confederate Council about the endless babbling of the human children. But even he admitted that their constant communication made them easy to monitor and predict. "At least we always know what they are thinking," he had said with amusement. The first sign that something was wrong came during the third hour of the morning shift. Zix noticed that the usual stream of messages from Earth had slowed to a trickle. He checked his instruments, thinking there might be a technical problem. "Hey Vrex, are you getting anything from Sector 7? He called out. Vrex looked at his displays and frowned. "Now that you mention it, traffic is way down. Maybe they are having equipment problems." Zix pulled up the communication logs from the past week. The pattern was clear. Human transmissions had been decreasing steadily over the past few days. Where normally there would be hundreds of messages per hour, there were now only dozens. "That is strange," he muttered. "Humans do not usually go quiet." By midday, the trickle had become a whisper. The few messages still coming from human space were routine automated signals, navigation beacons, weather reports, and standard diplomatic check-ins. The personal communications, entertainment broadcasts, and scientific discussions that normally filled the channels had almost completely stopped. "This is not normal," Kel observed, his compound eyes reflecting concern. "I have been monitoring human communications for 12 years. They have never been this quiet." Zix contacted his supervisor, an elderly Zephyrian named Qualls, who had been working at the communication center since before first contact with humanity. "Sir, we are seeing unusual patterns in human communications. Their traffic is down by over 80%. Qualls floated over to Zix's station, his translucent body shimmering with curiosity. "Show me." The displays showed the dramatic drop in human communications over the past week. What had once been a constant flood of messages was now barely a stream. "Interesting," Qualls said after studying the data. "Perhaps they are having internal political troubles again. Humans are known for their instability. But sir, this is different. Even during their wars and political crises, they kept talking. They actually talked more during those times, not less." Qualls was quiet for a moment. "Submit a report to the Confederate Council. Let them know about the decreased communications. But do not worry too much. Humans are unpredictable creatures. They probably have one of their holidays or festivals happening." By evening, the whisper had become complete silence. The last human transmission was received at 23:47 Standard Galactic Time. It was a routine status report from a human mining station in the Kepler system, confirming that their operations were proceeding normally, and that they would submit their next report in 7 days. After that, nothing. Zix stayed late, monitoring the channels that normally carried human communications. The silence was eerie. For the first time in 30 years, there was a gap in the galactic communication network where human voices used to be. It is probably just a technical problem, he told himself. Their equipment will be back online tomorrow. But deep down, something felt wrong. Humans did not go quiet. Even when they slept, their automated systems kept broadcasting. Even when they were angry or scared, they kept talking. Communication was as natural to them as breathing. News of the human silence spread quickly through the Confederate bureaucracy. The next morning, officials from a dozen different species were asking questions. Where were the humans? Why had they stopped talking? Was this some kind of new strategy? The Thraxian military commander was pleased. Finally, the noisy children have learned to be quiet. Perhaps they have realized they are not as important as they thought. The Centauri trade representatives were concerned. Our agreements with the humans require regular communication. If they have withdrawn from the galactic community, our trade deals might be invalid. The scientific community was puzzled. Human researchers were supposed to present their findings on quantum biology next month. Why would they go silent now? But in the communication center, Zix continued to monitor the empty channels. Something in his gut told him this was not a technical problem or a political withdrawal. This was something else entirely. He had studied human behavior for years as part of his job. Humans were social creatures who needed to communicate like other species needed to eat or sleep. They formed bonds through conversation, solved problems by talking them through, and processed their emotions by sharing them with others. For humans to go completely quiet was like asking a crystalline collective entity to stop thinking, or telling a Vorthan to stop moving. It went against their basic nature. As the days passed and the silence continued, other species began to take notice. The galaxy seemed quieter somehow, less chaotic. The constant background noise of human chatter was gone, and in its place was an unsettling emptiness. Some were relieved. Peace and quiet at last, they said. Others were worried. Something is wrong, they whispered. But in the far reaches of space, in systems that humans had claimed as their own, automated systems continued to function. Ships moved along their programmed routes. Mining operations extracted resources from distant asteroids. Defense satellites maintained their orbits around human colonies. Everything continued to work perfectly, but there were no human voices to be heard anywhere in the galaxy. The silence stretched on, growing deeper and more mysterious with each passing day. And in the communication center, Zix kept watching the empty channels, waiting for the humans to start talking again. He did not know that he would never hear their voices the same way again. 3 months had passed since the humans went quiet, and the mystery only grew deeper. What started as concern at the Galactic Communication Center had spread throughout the Confederate government. Questions were being asked at the highest levels, but no one had answers. Captain Nex of the Confederate Survey Division stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Seeker, watching the blue-green planet rotate slowly below them. Earth looked exactly as it had during his last visit 2 years ago. The same swirling clouds, the same sparkling cities visible on the night side, the same orbital stations maintaining their regular patterns. "Any response to our hail?" he asked his communications officer. "Nothing, sir. We have been broadcasting on all human frequencies for 6 hours. Not even their automated systems are responding." Nex had visited Earth many times during his career. It was always a busy, noisy place. Human air traffic control would start talking to approaching ships while they were still days away from the planet. The orbital platforms would broadcast greetings in dozens of languages. Even the planet's moon base would chime in with weather reports and docking assignments. Now there was only silence. "Take us into orbit around their largest population center," Nex ordered. "I want to see what is happening down there." The Seeker descended toward the continent the humans called North America, approaching the massive city cluster they knew as the Eastern Megalopolis. Through the ship's telescopes, Nex could see the familiar sights, towering buildings reaching toward the sky, networks of transportation tubes connecting different districts, and the geometric patterns of urban planning that humans seemed to love. But something was wrong. The city was too still, too quiet. There should be thousands of flying vehicles moving between the buildings. The transportation tubes should be glowing with the light of high-speed trains. The streets should be filled with the tiny moving dots that were individual humans going about their daily lives. Instead, the city looked like a museum display, perfect and preserved but empty of life. Sir, I am picking up some interesting readings, reported Science Officer Valk, her tentacles dancing over her control panel. The city is still receiving power. Life support systems are functioning. Environmental controls are maintaining optimal temperature and humidity levels, but I'm not detecting any large-scale human biosignatures. What do you mean by large-scale? Nex asked. I can detect some scattered life signs, but nothing like the billions of humans that should be living in a city this size. It is as if 99% of the population just disappeared. Nex felt a chill run through his crystalline spine. He had seen war zones and plague planets, but this was different. There were no signs of destruction, no evidence of catastrophe. The city looked perfect, as if its inhabitants had simply stepped out for a moment and planned to return. Take us to one of their spaceports, he commanded. I want to land and investigate directly. The Seeker touched down at John F. Kennedy Interstellar Port, the same facility where first contact had taken place 30 years earlier. Nex remembered the crowds of curious humans who had gathered to see the first alien visitors, their constant questions and excited chatter as they tried to learn everything about galactic civilization. Now the spaceport was empty. The landing pads were clean and well-maintained, but there were no ground crews to guide them in, no customs officials to process their arrival, no maintenance teams standing by to service their ship. Nex led a small team out of the ship, wearing environmental suits as a precaution. The air quality readings were normal, actually better than normal, as if the atmospheric processors had been running without the pollution that billions of humans usually produced. The terminal building was immaculate. The floors were spotless, the windows were clean, and all the equipment appeared to be functioning perfectly. Electronic displays showed current weather conditions and transportation schedules, but the schedules were all blank. There were no flights arriving or departing because there were no passengers to carry. Look at this, called out Valk, standing beside a cafe in the terminal. The food dispensers are still stocked. The coffee machines are still warm, but there are no signs that anyone has been here recently. Nex examined the scene more closely. Everything was too perfect, too clean. In his experience, when a place was truly abandoned, it showed signs of decay, dust accumulation, equipment failures, the gradual breakdown that came when no one was maintaining things. But this place looked like it was being actively maintained, even though there was no one there to do the maintaining. Sir, you need to see this, came a voice over the comm system. It was Kren, one of the security officers who had been exploring the administrative offices. Nex found Kren standing in front of a large display screen in what appeared to be the port's operations center. The screen showed a complex diagram of the entire port facility, with thousands of tiny indicators showing the status of different systems. Everything was green. Every system was functioning at optimal levels. Sir, according to this, the entire port has been operating on automatic for the past 3 months. Every maintenance routine, every security check, every environmental system, all running perfectly without any human oversight. That should not be possible, Nex said. Human technology is not advanced enough for that level of automation. That is what I thought too, Kren replied. But look at this. He activated another screen that showed maintenance logs. The record showed routine repairs being performed, equipment being upgraded, and supplies being reordered. All happening automatically, all perfectly timed and coordinated. Their computers are more sophisticated than we thought, Valk observed. This level of predictive maintenance requires quantum processing capabilities that humans claimed they did not possess. Nex was beginning to feel uneasy. Something was very wrong with this picture. Either the humans had been lying about their technological capabilities, or something else was maintaining their facilities for them. The team spent several more hours exploring the port, then expanded their search to the surrounding city. Everywhere they went, they found the same thing. Empty buildings that were perfectly maintained, automated systems that continued to function flawlessly, and no sign of what had happened to the billions of humans who should have been there. In residential areas, they found apartments with personal belongings still in place, clothes hanging in closets, food in refrigerators, books open on tables as if someone had just stepped away for a moment. But the dust patterns were wrong. Everything was too clean, too preserved. In commercial districts, they found shops with fully stocked shelves and cash registers that still accepted credit transactions, but no customers and no employees. The inventory management systems were still ordering new products and rotating old stock to prevent spoilage. "It is like they all just vanished," Valk said as the team returned to their ship. "But they left everything running perfectly." That night, as the Seeker orbited Earth, Nex composed his report for Confederate Command. He struggled to find words to describe what they had found. How do you explain the disappearance of an entire civilization that left no trace of departure? Similar reports were coming in from other survey teams across human space. Every human world, every colony, every space station, all empty but perfectly maintained. Ships missing from orbital docks, but the docks themselves functioning flawlessly. Mining operations on distant asteroids continuing to extract resources, but no workers anywhere to be found. The Confederate Council held emergency sessions to discuss the situation. Some members suspected foul play. Perhaps the humans had been attacked by an unknown enemy. Others theorized that it might be some kind of mass exodus, though no one could imagine where an entire species might go. The Thraxian military commander, Warlord Kazek, had his own theory. "The humans have finally realized they are inferior," he announced at one council meeting. "They have withdrawn from Galactic society because they cannot compete with their betters." "But where did they go?" asked the Centauri representative. Kazek waved dismissively. "Who cares? They are gone, and their territories are empty. This is an opportunity for more worthy species to claim their resources." Not everyone agreed with Kazek's assessment, but as weeks passed without any sign of the humans, more and more voices began to suggest that the empty human world should be redistributed among the remaining Confederate species. After all, the reasoning went, someone had to maintain those valuable mining operations in agricultural colonies. Someone had to make use of the strategic locations that humans had claimed. It would be wasteful to leave such resources unutilized, but in the depths of space, in locations that few aliens had ever visited, other things were happening. Ships moved through the darkness between stars, their hulls black and silent. Automated monitoring stations that had been dismissed as simple weather satellites began collecting different kinds of data. And in hidden facilities that did not appear on any official maps, sophisticated computers continued their work, watching, listening, learning, and preparing for what would come next. The humans had not vanished. They had simply stopped talking. And that, as the galaxy would soon learn, was when they became truly dangerous. A year had passed since the humans went silent, and the galaxy had begun to adapt to their absence. The Confederate Council had officially designated former human territories as temporarily unoccupied, and had started the process of reassigning resource rights to other member species. Warlord Kazek of the Thraxian Dominion was particularly pleased with the arrangement. His people had been granted mining rights to several asteroid fields in what used to be human space, along with permission to establish military outposts on 3 former human colonies. "The weak have stepped aside for the strong," he declared to his officers as they prepared to take possession of their new territories. This is the natural order of things. The Thraxian fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 40 escort vessels, more than enough firepower to secure the empty human worlds and establish permanent bases. Kazek had commanded similar operations dozens of times during the Thraxian expansion period, claiming planets from species too weak to defend themselves. This should have been even easier since there was no one left to resist. The first sign of trouble came when the Thraxian advance force reached the Kepler mining system. Commander Voss, leading a squadron of 6 ships, reported unusual readings as they approached the asteroid fields. "Sir, the mining platforms are still operational," Voss transmitted back to the main fleet. "The humans may have left, but their equipment is still extracting resources. We should be able to take control of the operations immediately." "Excellent," Kazek replied. "Secure the platforms and begin establishing our base of operations. I want full military control of that system within 72 hours. But 6 hours later, Voss missed his scheduled check-in. Then 12 hours. Then 24 hours. When Kazek arrived with the main fleet, he found Voss's ships drifting powerless in space. The vessels were intact but completely dark. No power, no life support, no communications. They hung in the void like dead metal shells. "What happened here?" Kazek demanded as his boarding teams investigated the silent ships. The answer, when it came, was deeply unsettling. The ships had not been damaged by weapons fire or sabotage. Instead, their computer systems had simply stopped working. Every processor, every memory bank, every circuit had been wiped clean. The ship's artificial intelligence systems had been reduced to blank slates, unable even to maintain basic life support. The crews were alive but unconscious, found floating in the corridors where they had collapsed when their ships lost power. Medical scans showed no signs of injury or poisoning. They appeared to be in some kind of induced coma, completely unresponsive to external stimuli. "How is this possible?" Kazek asked his chief technical officer. "What could cause this kind of system failure?" "I do not know, sir. It is as if something reached into our computers and erased everything, but that should be impossible. Our systems are protected by military-grade encryption and isolation protocols." Kazek ordered his fleet to maintain a defensive formation while they investigated further. He had conquered dozens of worlds and faced every kind of military technology the galaxy had to offer, but he had never seen anything like this. The mining platforms in the asteroid field were still functioning normally, their automated systems continuing to extract valuable minerals and process them into refined materials. But when Thraxian engineers tried to interface with the human-built computers, the same thing happened. Their own systems crashed, their data was wiped, and they fell into the same mysterious coma that had affected Voss's crews. "Sir, I recommend we withdraw from this system," advised his tactical officer. "Whatever is happening here is beyond our understanding." But Kazek was not willing to give up so easily. "The humans are gone," he said firmly. "This is just malfunctioning equipment. We will figure out how to control it." Over the next several weeks, similar incidents began occurring throughout former human space. Ships that ventured too close to abandoned human facilities suffered mysterious system failures. Crews that tried to board human space stations fell into unexplained comas. Salvage operations that attempted to strip valuable technology from human installations found their own equipment turned against them. The pattern was always the same. No visible weapons, no obvious attacks, just the sudden and complete failure of alien technology whenever it interacted with human systems. Other species began to report their own encounters with the phenomenon. A Centauri trade convoy that tried to use a human space dock found their cargo ships dead in space. A Zephyrian research team investigating human laboratories on Mars lost contact with their base ship. Even civilian vessels that wandered into former human territories by accident were found days later, their crews unconscious and their computers blank. But the most disturbing reports came from the pirates and raiders who had seen the empty human worlds as easy targets for plunder. The Crimson Nebula Gang had been one of the most feared pirate organizations in the galaxy, specializing in raids on poorly defended mining colonies and trading posts. When they heard about the abandoned human settlements, they saw an opportunity for the biggest score in their history. Their leader, a brutal Vorthan named Skath, led a fleet of 20 ships into the former human colony of New Geneva. The planet had been a major agricultural center, with vast automated farms that produced food for dozens of other worlds. The technology alone would be worth millions of credits on the black market. The initial landing went smoothly. Skath's crews spread out across the planet, identifying the most valuable equipment and preparing to load it onto their ships. The automated farms were still operating, tended by sophisticated robots that continued their work as if nothing had changed. But when the pirates tried to reprogram the robots or access the farm management computers, things went wrong very quickly. "Boss, we got a problem," one of Skath's lieutenants reported over the comm system. "The robots aren't responding to our control codes, and some of our crew are acting strange." "Define strange," Skath growled. "They're just standing there, staring at nothing. Won't respond when we talk to them. It's like they're asleep with their eyes open." Within hours, half of Skath's crew had fallen into the same mysterious coma. The other half were panicking, reporting that the planet's automated systems seemed to be working against them. Doors that should have opened remained sealed. Transportation systems refused to carry them. Even the environmental controls began making their areas uncomfortably cold or hot. Skath ordered an immediate evacuation. But when his crews tried to return to their ships, they found that their vessels' computers had been corrupted. Navigation systems showed impossible star charts. Weapon systems targeted their own ships. Communication arrays broadcast nothing but static. The final message from Skath's fleet was received by Confederate monitoring stations 3 days later. It was not a distress call or a request for help. Instead, it was a single transmission that repeated the same phrase over and over in a dozen different languages. You were warned. You were warned. You were warned. When rescue teams finally reached New Geneva, they found Scath's ships arranged in a perfect geometric pattern around the planet. The vessels were intact but powerless, their crews unconscious but alive. The only change to the ships was in their computer systems, which had been wiped clean except for detailed records of every crime the pirates had ever committed. Similar incidents were reported across the galaxy. Every group that tried to take advantage of humanity's absence, every individual who saw the empty human worlds as an opportunity for profit or conquest, found themselves facing the same mysterious fate. The Confederate Council tried to dismiss these incidents as coincidental equipment failures or psychological effects caused by exploring empty worlds, but the pattern was too consistent, too targeted to be random. "Something is still out there," insisted Council member Trix during one heated session. The humans did not simply disappear. They left something behind, something that is protecting their territory. "Impossible," Warlord Kazakh replied, though he had grown noticeably more cautious since losing 3 more ships to the mysterious phenomenon. "We have scanned every human world, every space station, every facility. There are no signs of active defenses or hidden populations." "Then how do you explain what happened to your fleets?" Trix demanded. Kazakh had no answer. No one did. In the depths of space, in facilities that existed in the gaps between official star charts, sophisticated computers continued their quiet work. They watched every ship that entered former human space, analyzed every attempt to claim human technology, and responded with measured precision. The Watchers had been patient for a full year, observing how different species reacted to humanity's absence. They had taken careful note of who showed respect for the empty human worlds and who saw them as opportunities for exploitation. Some aliens had surprised them with their restraint and compassion. These species received nothing but silent observation. Others had revealed their true nature through their actions. These received lessons in the consequences of opportunism. The galaxy was being tested and the results were being carefully recorded. Soon the final phase of humanity's long lesson would begin. Dr. Yellen had been studying human technology for 15 years, and she thought she understood it well. The humans had always been open about their capabilities, sharing their scientific discoveries freely with the Galactic Confederation. Their technology seemed straightforward, clever but not revolutionary, advanced but not threatening. That was before she discovered the hidden archive. Yellen was part of a Confederate research team investigating the human science station at Proxima Centauri. Like all human facilities, it had been abandoned for over a year, but remained in perfect working order. The research equipment was still running experiments, the computers were still processing data, and the environmental systems maintained optimal conditions for the work that no one was there to perform. It was while trying to access the station's research database that Yellen accidentally triggered something she was not supposed to find. "Fascinating," she murmured, her 6 eyes studying the display screen. She had been trying to download human research on quantum biology when her access probe had somehow activated a hidden partition in the station's computer core. The screen filled with files that had not been visible in the main directory. Thousands upon thousands of documents, video recordings, and data analyses that had been carefully concealed behind multiple layers of encryption and misdirection. "What is this?" asked her research partner, Dr. Nexus, floating over to examine the display. Yellen opened the first file at random. It was a detailed behavioral analysis of the Thraxian military command structure, complete with psychological profiles of individual officers, assessments of their tactical preferences, and predictions about how they would react under various stress conditions. Why would human biologists have files about Thraxian military psychology? Nexus wondered. The next file contained similar information about Centauri trade negotiations, not just the official diplomatic records, but detailed analyses of individual negotiators, their personal motivations, their cultural blind spots, and their likely responses to different bargaining strategies. "This is not biology research," Yellen said, her voice growing cold. "This is intelligence gathering." They opened more files and the pattern became clear. Every species in the Galactic Confederation was represented in the hidden archive. Every interaction with humans had been carefully documented and analyzed. Every diplomatic meeting, trade negotiation, cultural exchange, and casual conversation had been recorded and studied in minute detail. The humans had not just been learning languages and customs, They had been conducting a comprehensive psychological and sociological study of every alien species they had encountered. "Look at this," Nexus said, highlighting a section of text. "This file is labeled Threat Assessment Protocol, Phase 1 Implementation. It is dated 3 years ago." Yellen read the document with growing alarm. It outlined a systematic program to evaluate the long-term compatibility of various alien species with human civilization. Each species was being rated on factors like aggression levels, territorial expansion tendencies, treatment of weaker civilizations, and willingness to cooperate versus exploit. Phase 1 was information gathering, she read aloud. Phase 2 would be behavioral testing. Phase 3, she paused, her voice trailing off. "What does it say about Phase 3? Nexus asked. "Selection," Yellen whispered. "Phase 3 is selection." They searched deeper into the archive, finding files that made their worst fears seem small. The humans had not just been studying alien behavior, they had been predicting it. Detailed models showed how different species would likely react to various scenarios, including the sudden disappearance of humanity itself. "They knew," Yellen said in horror. They knew exactly what would happen when they went quiet. They predicted which species would try to claim their territories, which ones would remain respectful, and which ones would see their absence as an opportunity for exploitation. The most disturbing file was labeled Behavioral Predictions, Post-Withdrawal Scenario. It contained accurate forecasts of how the Thraxians would react to empty human worlds, how pirates would attempt to raid abandoned facilities, and how the Confederate Council would eventually vote to redistribute human resources. Every major event of the past year had been anticipated and planned for. But how could they know all this? Nexus asked. Humans are not telepathic. They do not have any special psychological abilities. Yellen found the answer in a file marked Species Analysis Methodology. The document explained the human approach in simple clinical terms. For 30 years, they had been studying alien behavior the same way their ancestors had studied animal behavior on Earth, through careful observation, pattern recognition, and statistical analysis. They called it persistence hunting, tracking their prey not with speed or strength but with patience and intelligence. The same technique that had allowed early humans to hunt animals much larger and faster than themselves, by simply following them until they collapsed from exhaustion. We were not their allies, Yellen realized with growing dread. We were their research subjects. The final file in the archive was a video recording dated just 1 day before the humans went silent. It showed a human she recognized, Commander Sarah Chen, who had been the head of human diplomatic operations in this sector. If you are watching this recording, Chen said, looking directly into the camera, it means you have discovered our primary research archive. Congratulations. You are more curious and persistent than we predicted. Chen paused, and Yellen could see something cold and calculating in her eyes that had never been there during their diplomatic meetings. For 30 years we have been studying you, Chen continued. All of you. Every species in the Confederation. We needed to understand who you really were, beneath the polite diplomatic facades and trade agreements. The recording showed Chen walking through what appeared to be a massive data center, with walls lined with computer servers and analysis stations. We tried to fit into your galactic community, she said. We shared our discoveries, opened our worlds to your visitors, and participated in your councils and committees. We wanted to believe that peaceful coexistence was possible. Chen stopped in front of a large display screen showing statistical models and behavioral predictions. But we are a species that learns from experience, and your behavior taught us that coexistence would only last as long as we remained useful and non-threatening. The moment we became inconvenient or appeared weak, you would turn on us. The camera focused on the display screen, showing detailed analyses of dozens of historical incidents where stronger civilizations had absorbed or eliminated weaker ones. So we conducted an experiment, Chen said. We wanted to see what you would do if you thought we were gone. Would you respect our territories? Would you honor our treaties? Would you try to find out what happened to us? The answer, displayed in stark charts and graphs, was clear. Most species had shown their true nature within months of humanity's disappearance. The results confirmed our worst fears, Chen continued. You saw our absence not as a tragedy to be investigated, but as an opportunity to be exploited. You divided up our worlds like scavengers fighting over a carcass. Chen turned back to face the camera directly. We tried coexistence. You taught us it was not possible. Thank you for the lesson. Class dismissed. The recording ended abruptly, leaving Yellen and Nexus staring at a blank screen. We have to report this to the Confederate Council, Nexus said. But Yellen was not listening. She was thinking about the implications of what they had discovered. If the humans had been this thorough in studying other species, what else had they been preparing for? What was Phase 3? And most importantly, where were they now? As if in answer to her thoughts, the station's communication system activated. A new message appeared on the screen, addressed specifically to their research team. Dr. Yellen and Dr. Nexus, the message read, your discovery of this archive was anticipated. Your psychological profile suggested a 73% probability that you would access restricted files during your investigation. Thank you for confirming the accuracy of our behavioral models. The message continued. Please be aware that your current location and activities are being monitored. Your findings will be reported to your respective governments as planned. This is also part of the experiment. Your cooperation is appreciated. Phase 3 will begin shortly. The message disappeared, leaving them alone with the horrible realization that even their discovery of the truth had been predicted and planned for. Humanity had not been the galaxy's junior partner. They had been its judge and jury, carefully studying each species to determine which ones deserved to survive the coming selection. The trial was almost over. Soon the verdict would be announced. The Confederate Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as Dr. Yellen finished presenting her findings from the Human Archive. The revelation that humanity had been conducting a 30-year intelligence operation against the entire galaxy had shaken every assumption about their former allies. So the humans have been spying on us all along, said Council Leader Vorthak, his crystalline form dim with concern. But that still does not explain where they went or what they are planning. Warlord Kazak shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Since losing several fleets to the mysterious phenomenon protecting human territories, he had grown uncharacteristically cautious. If they have been studying us for 30 years, they must know about our military capabilities, our weaknesses, our strategic resources. They could be planning an attack. Or they could already be dead, suggested the Centauri trade representative. Perhaps their experiment failed and they destroyed themselves in the process. But even as the council debated, evidence was mounting that humanity was far from dead. Reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy, ships disappearing in areas that used to be human space, mysterious equipment failures affecting anyone who tried to claim human technology, and strange incidents involving individuals who had been particularly aggressive in exploiting humanity's absence. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Something was actively protecting former human territories, and that something had detailed knowledge of every species' activities and intentions. The answer came 2 years and 1 day after the humans first went quiet. Every communication system in Confederate space activated simultaneously. Every screen, every speaker, every holographic display in the galaxy began broadcasting the same message. It was impossible to turn off, impossible to block, and impossible to trace. The image showed a human woman sitting at a simple desk in what appeared to be a command center. She was middle-aged with gray hair and calm eyes that seemed to look directly at each viewer. Behind her, dozens of other humans worked at computer stations, their faces focused and professional. Greetings, the woman said. My name is Admiral Lisa Park and I represent the Human Oversight Committee. For 30 years we have been your neighbors, your trading partners, and your allies. During that time, we have been conducting the most comprehensive social experiment in galactic history. The image changed to show a vast data center filled with analysis equipment and monitoring stations. We wanted to understand who you really were, Park continued. Not the diplomatic personalities you presented in council meetings. Not the carefully crafted images you showed in trade negotiations, but your true nature when you thought no one was watching. Charts and graphs appeared on the screen, showing behavioral analyses of every major species in the Confederation. 2 years ago, we implemented the final phase of our study. We withdrew from galactic society to observe how you would react to our absence. Would you respect our territories? Would you try to find out what happened to us? Would you honor the treaties and friendships we had built together? The data displayed on screen painted a damning picture. Most species had shown their true colors within months, treating humanity's disappearance as an opportunity rather than a tragedy. The results were Educational, Park said with cold precision. Some of you exceeded our expectations. The Altarian Republic maintained respectful boundaries around our territories, and even conducted search operations to try to find us. The Zephyrian Collective honored all existing trade agreements and set aside resources to help us if we ever returned. Green checkmarks appeared next to several species names on the display. Others confirmed our worst fears about your intentions. Red marks appeared beside other names, including the Thraxian Dominion and several pirate organizations. For those species that showed respect and genuine concern for our welfare, we offer continued friendship and expanded cooperation. Your restraint and compassion have earned our trust. The display showed detailed plans for new trade agreements, technology sharing, and joint exploration projects. For those who saw our absence as an opportunity for exploitation, Park's voice grew colder. We offer a different kind of education. The image changed to show Thraxian ships drifting powerless in space, pirate fleets arranged in geometric patterns around abandoned colonies, and salvage operations that had been quietly sabotaged. Every attempt to steal our technology, claim our territories, or profit from our supposed disappearance has been carefully documented. We have been watching. We have been learning, and we have been responding. Warlord Kazakh felt his blood turn to ice as the display showed detailed records of every Thraxian operation in former human space, complete with the names of officers involved and the exact methods used to disable their ships. You see, we never left, Park explained. We simply stopped talking. For a species that communicates as much as we do, silence is the most powerful weapon we possess. In the quiet, we could observe your true nature without the interference of diplomatic politeness. The display showed hidden monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, camouflage ships observing from the darkness between stars, and infiltration networks that had been gathering intelligence for decades. We are not angry with you for revealing your true nature, Park continued. Anger is an emotional response, and this has been a scientific study. You simply performed exactly as our behavioral models predicted you would. The data center behind Park came into focus, showing hundreds of humans analyzing alien behavior patterns and social structures. But science requires consequences for actions. Behavior modification requires both positive and negative reinforcement. Those species that showed wisdom and restraint will be rewarded. Those that showed aggression and opportunism will face appropriate corrections. The screen filled with detailed assessments of each species. Some received grades of A or B, with notes about expanded cooperation and technology sharing. Others received failing grades, with detailed lists of behavioral modifications that would be required. The Thraxian Dominion, for example, will find their military expansion capabilities limited until they demonstrate a commitment to peaceful coexistence. The Crimson Nebula Gang and similar criminal organizations will discover that their operations are no longer profitable in any system we consider important. Park looked directly at the camera again, and her expression was that of a patient teacher addressing unruly students. This is not a declaration of war. War is what you do when diplomacy fails. This is what comes after war fails, judgment. For 30 years, we gave you every opportunity to prove that you could be trusted with the power and knowledge that comes from galactic citizenship. Most of you failed that test. The display showed a new star map with human territories clearly marked and expanded. Systems that had been abandoned were now shown to be fully operational, just hidden from alien observation. We tried coexistence. You taught us it was not possible. Thank you for the lesson. Class dismissed. Park stood up from her desk and the camera pulled back to show the true scale of the facility behind her. It was not just a command center. It was a vast complex that stretched as far as the eye could see, filled with humans working at thousands of monitoring and analysis stations. The age of humanity's loud diplomacy is over. The age of our quiet judgment has begun. We will continue to watch. We will continue to learn. And we will continue to respond to your behavior with appropriate consequences. The transmission ended, but not before displaying a final message that appeared on every screen in the galaxy. Final grades have been assigned. Report cards are being delivered. Summer school is now in session for those who failed. Class will resume when you have learned to behave appropriately. In the Confederate Council chamber, the silence stretched on for long minutes after the transmission ended. The representatives stared at each other, trying to process what they had just learned. The humans had never been junior partners in galactic civilization. They had been its teachers, conducting the largest and longest psychological experiment in known history. Every interaction, every treaty, every friendly conversation had been part of a comprehensive assessment of alien character and intentions. And now the final grades were in. Some species celebrated their passing marks and looked forward to new partnerships with humanity. Others faced the terrifying reality that they were now subjects in a behavioral modification program run by beings who understood them better than they understood themselves. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had taught everyone the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that appears harmless until it is too late to run. The age of human silence was ending. The age of human supervision had begun. And across the galaxy, in systems both known and hidden, automated monitoring stations continued their quiet work, watching, learning, and preparing to deliver the next lesson to any species that still needed to learn how to behave.